This is the Town of Camden Select Board meeting for September 6, 2022. We're being broadcast on YouTube as well as Spectrum Cable Channel 1303. And we have an active webinar on Zoom. The link can be found on the town's meeting agenda for tonight. And that agenda can be found on the website under the Select Board, going to Select Board meetings, the packet for, or the agenda for this evening, and there is the link. In terms of, as we always state on the beginning of the meeting, the webinar participants come on board as attendees. If they raise their hand, we'll try to bring them on as participants to ask questions or provide input. If not, they can utilize the Q&A function, although we may not be able to get to all questions that are asked of a certain topic. And please do not use the chat function. It's just too much to monitor. With that, we will enter our agenda, item 1. I'll ask anybody if they have any public comments on a non-agenda item. And again, a request that you stick to comments and also that you respectfully stay within the 3-minute suggested limit. And I know Ms. Parker would like to speak.
Is this working? Do I press?
It is, but keep it closer to your mouth, Beatty, please.
Okay.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Beatty Parker, 68 Washington Street, and I wanted to say something about the stresses of the post office.
Oh.
I got there to mail a package this morning and found that at 11:30 they closed, and they're going to do that 8:30 to 11:30, at least this week. I don't know how long, but in the recent past, I've been asking them how they are, and they're not good over there. They're really having trouble. So I just want people to know that the post office is having problems, and they have for a long time, and now COVID and the employment situation is making it fairly unbearable. The post office has a great value to the town as one of the anchor institutions, along with bank and library and grocery store and all the things that make it a walkable town with a center. And we fought for it in the past, and I have strong feelings about maintaining it across the country, because it's having trouble all across the country. I learned today, making phone calls, that Rockland has the same problem that Camden does. There was one guy at the desk who was almost in tears a few weeks ago. And he said, well, we can't get people, and it's the COVID or whatever, the unemployment thing. Mm-hmm. The postmen are overworked, and the postmaster just quit. And I guess there's a new one coming, but the postmaster's been helping out with the postman. And I feel, because I've been watching the post office situation for so long, because when they tried to sell the building and not have it in town, we mounted a group trying to keep it, which we finally succeeded only because of political influence, because somebody knew Barbara Bush, not because we were succeeding politically. Because there's been, for a long time, at least 2 generations, an effort to privatize that service. So I'm not really asking you to do anything, but just know that it's like a perfect storm now with the COVID, and the fact that they've been sort of under the gun to be privatized for a long time, and that we want to keep them, and we want to value them, and we want to tell them that we value them. Somebody, when I called today, suggested baking cookies. You know, I don't know what you think about it. I don't know how much they're valued in this country at large, but I think that they serve an amazing. They give us the service of having someone who actually goes around, walks around the town, knows who's getting their mail, in a culture where people are very separated, very unconnected.
Agreed.
I could go on for a long time, but I won't. But
Thank you, Bea.
take notice, please.
Thank you very much for your
Audra,
comments.
welcome.
It
back.
is a sign of the times.
Yeah.
Anybody,
Audra, pay attention.
anybody else in the public want to make a comment? Ken?
Good evening, I'm Ken Gross, I live in Camden. There is some confusion or perhaps even alarm on this side of the dais. I am hoping you can perhaps clarify the issue. So here's the issue. At your most recent meeting, you passed a resolution to take no action on the preservation, modification, or removal of the Montgomery Dam. Days later, a grant award was announced, the main purpose of which, as stated in the announcement...
Ken, I'm going to stop you because this is item 6A on the agenda. We'll be discussing exactly
Well,
what
I
you're
have
talking
noticed on agenda items that you often don't get to call on
it's
everybody who's
6A on the,
interested.
it's 6A on the agenda, so hold your comments for that.
Not only that, sometimes you take a vote before people have had a chance to
You'll
even
have a
speak.
chance to talk under 6A, Ken. Thank you.
Okay, I will hold this remark then.
Hang
I'll
in.
hold you to it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Other comments on any non-agenda item? Not hearing any, we will go to item 2, which is the approval of the board minutes from August 23rd, 2022. Anybody in the board have any comments, want to make a motion?
Yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't able to see those in the packet.
Oh, you know, I missed it too.
I'm so used to just.
Yeah, well, that's, so I would need a motion.
I was looking at the packet on the website, and so I thought maybe it was
No,
different,
you're
that
right,
somebody else
Allison.
was
I
able to see
skipped
them.
right by it, but I need a motion to table the minutes until, well.
So
just-
moved.
Anyone have a second? Thanks, Tom. All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Good catch. On the consent agenda, we have 3 items tonight. First is the renewal of Vittler's license for the Sea Dog Brew Pub. 2 is the approval of the Village Green application from the Realtors Fighting Homelessness fundraiser on October 1st, 2022. And lastly is the confirmation of MSAD 28 draft warrant article, which is a correction of the document that they had created for the November 8th, 2022 election. Are there any objections to the items on the consent agenda?
I don't object to them, but I guess.
You want me
just
to take it off and put it as an agenda item?
Yeah, I
Which
have a
one?
couple
The last
questions. Both of them. Well, I think the Sea Dog, from my perspective, could slide on through, but I have questions or comments about B and C.
All right, about what? Which one, I'm sorry? Both? B and, I'm sorry. B and C.
And Sandy's here
Okay.
to speak to B.
Sorry, what?
Okay.
Sandy's here to speak to B.
Oh, perfect. So well, the consent agenda will be limited.
No, I think that's basically what I'm saying, is that it would be nice to
The
talk
consent
about
agenda
it.
will be limited to any objections to 3A on the consent agenda. Not hearing any, they are hereby adopted. And we will move to an agenda item, which will be the approval of Village Green application from the Realtors Fighting Homelessness fundraiser for October 1st, 2022. Any comments to that?
I mean, I was just glad to see it and curious if it's a separate thing from the Homeless Coalition, or if they are going to be. if
Yes,
this-
it is separate. Let me give this to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Realtors are trying to do a fundraiser and also make aware the homelessness situation in the town, in the Mid-Coast region. I'm Sandy Cox. I'm president of the Penn Bay Council of Realtors. So what we're trying to do is raise $10,000, which will be matched by the Maine Association of Realtors Foundation. So we could be able to donate up to $20,000 towards Mid-Coast Habitat, Homeless Coalition, and New Hope for Women. So that's what our goal is to raise $20,000. On October 1st, we'd like to have probably 5 to 8 tents in the park. And some will be spending the night, just to emphasize it. We'd like to have people from the Homeless Coalition here to talk about it, answer questions if anybody has questions during that period of time. And probably by 9 o'clock Sunday morning, we'll be gone.
Packing up and
Clean,
leaving.
Packed up and leaving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the goal.
Any other questions of Sandy?
Do you know if the Homeless Coalition is going to also do theirs?
I've talked to them. They haven't confirmed yet, but that's the plan.
That's great. Thank you so much for organizing it.
Yeah. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Tom, thank you. Any discussion? All's in favor? Good luck, Sandy.
Thank you.
For raising the funds. Lastly, we have an item on the agenda now would be the confirmation of MSAD 28 draft warrant article for the November 8th, 2022 election. Questions, comments?
It just seemed like maybe it would be good to
It's up to you.
provide a little bit of background since we already voted on the
Why don't you
budget.
give us the missive on it?
from what I understand, there was a typo on the June ballot that went out with the school district budget, and this would just be correcting that typo.
Right.
And it's a bit of an awkward situation where the school's statute does not allow them to, it needs to be 30 days from when they have their public hearing to
Right.
when the budget is voted on through
Right.
the validation process, which is when it's put on the ballot.
Right.
But as you all know, we need to have absentee ballots available to the public
Right.
at least 30 days in advance of voting. And then on top of that, because of the ADA ballots, it's more like a 45-day period between, when the ballots are available or when, the select board needs to vote on them and when they actually need to be available to the public. And so it conflicts a bit with the school district's statute. So it's a bit of an awkward
Right, right.
situation. So
And
we're
the bottom
putting
line is it has no effect on taxes because the number's already been plugged
They
into
gave us the correct numbers for
number
commitment
we had. It was just
purposes.
a ballot, boo-boo. So this will be
Right,
on
that's what I-
November 8th
yeah.
Ballot.
I'm reading the question, and it says, do you favor approving the corrected regional school, blah, blah, blah? That was adopted at the corrected district budget meeting held on October 12th, 2022. So we're assuming that,
October 12th, 2022 is next month.
Yeah.
so what if it's not adopted at the corrective district budget meeting held on October?
That's
I mean, that's
That's a
the
good question.
awkward
That's-
situation with
yeah,
the ballots
right,
and when
right.
they need to be printed
Right.
versus when they have to hold their meeting in advance of voting.
Correct.
Yeah.
They can't have the
Some
meeting
state
early-
legislators should really think about
Yeah.
fixing
You
this.
think?
They
Yeah.
cannot have that meeting any earlier
Right.
than the 12th of October. That's the issue.
Right, and we
Because you need
can't,
30 days between,
yeah, and we have to have the ballots available for the public at
Right.
least 30 days in
Right.
advance, so it's very awkward.
It's just,
Public receive this question before October 12th?
it'll be on the ballot in
So the
November.
ballots will be back from the printers,
End of,
I'm just trying to think, November.
it's,
They're available a month before.
yeah, they're
so-
available a month
Yeah.
before. Yeah. They'll be
So,
on-
I mean, but I would think this is really the school district's job to put out a
Yes.
Right.
memo
Yes.
explaining it. There's
Yes.
really no other option than to do this
No,
right now.
no.
But it would be nice if we didn't have to be the ones attempting to explain it because
Exactly.
I don't want to explain it.
we
'cause
obviously aren't.
I just refer them to the superintendent and the school board.
I mean, but that really, it was just, thank goodness they only made the mistake on the ballot and
Right.
not in all the numbers that they sent to.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
not impacting taxes, it's
No.
not.
No, it won't affect our mill rate. It's already been being
Yeah,
calculated.
what they discussed publicly, it was all the correct numbers.
Correct. The numbers we saw were the correct numbers, blah, blah, blah. It's just this, anyway. So that's what it's all about. Rather confusing, yes, but do I have a motion to approve the item?
Oh, it looks like-
Oh, Ray.
This just brings up something, Ray Andreessen, Cove Road.
Thanks, Ray.
And I noticed in the June ballot, and I usually vote by absentee ballot.
Yep.
And there is no, and on the school budgets, there is never a dollar figure in there if you're on an absentee ballot. And this is the same situation here. Is there anything that the town of Camden and Rockport can do, and the other three towns and the high school, to get the school to put their budget together in time so that the voters, all the voters, can see what the numbers are.
Good question.
I think this goes back to the state legislators need to fix this because there's a contradiction
Is there
between,
something you as a town manager then, and the select board can get to the state legislatures, including our own legislators representing us in here, to do something about this? Because
Yeah.
it is really, I mean, I'm thinking of other people who can't walk down to the
I
town
get it,
hall
Ray. You know,
and get the numbers.
I get it, Ray. You're 100, 150, 200%
And it
right.
has forced me to vote no on the school budgets, which I don't like to do, but I do it every year
well, I've done the
because
same.
they don't put the numbers in.
You're absolutely right, and I agree with you, but it's an interesting conundrum.
They do have their meeting, that's the, the open meeting.
Yeah, but Ray's referring to the ballot issue, and I agree with him. I think
They're
that's-
asking us to
that's- People don't go to the school board meetings necessarily. They don't go to select board meetings. I get it. But they expect to see something on the ballot that makes some sense. I totally
I
agree
mean, you
with you.
wouldn't, as a select board, send out a budget for the town saying, trust us on the numbers.
I'd have arrows in my back.
It is available online.
All right, let's,
I think it's a good point.
It's definitely a good point, but there
Absolutely.
is something available to people that.
there is.
If we want to pursue it, write a letter to Dave Merritt and Vicky, or are you going to? I can.
Yeah, but you go to your state representatives,
Ray
that's
might be a
correct.
good candidate, and we
That's
could
correct.
pass it along.
Can I have a motion to accept this draft warrant
Make a
article?
motion that we accept the confirmation of MSAD number 28 draft warrant article for the November 8, 2022 election.
Second.
A motion made and seconded for the discussion. All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much. I want to our action items, the first of which is to schedule a public hearing for the 180-day, for a 180-day, 6-month extension to the moratorium ordinance to prohibit the installation, construction, or modification of piers, docks, floats, or ramps serving residential properties within the bounds of the coastal and outer harbors zones. Now, just for background here, why we're here on this is because on March 15th was the first time this board had discussed the idea of the moratorium. That's when the clock starts ticking, even though the voters didn't approve it until June ballot. So that's 6 months from that March 15th is September 15th, which is the next week. To address the extension, we must do 180 days. You can't do 15 or 150. You have to do 180 days. And we will discuss the progress made toward addressing this issue. Next week, unfortunately, this room is dedicated to, or Audra, correct me if I'm wrong, it's next week when SIF is dedicated to using this room all day and part of the night. So this room is not available to us next week. One of the, and I know, Tom, you're out of town anyway, but that's understandable. And next week you're out of town.
Not with Tom.
Sorry? Not this- So I was going to suggest that we consider this Friday at 3 p.m. for this, even though Tom will still be missing because he's going overseas, as a possible meeting to have this hearing, or time to set this hearing, because we have to notice to the public.
Can I participate on Zoom?
Yes.
Oh, it says that in our policy, doesn't it?
Well, if you're remote, I mean, if you have to be remote, just, all you have to do is ask.
I'm not going to go down that road right now, but
So I can't do 3 p.m.
Okay.
I'm booked from 10:30 to 6 p.m. I could do maybe 2 to 3.
2 o'clock?
I could do 2 to 3, but I cannot do 3.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Or I can do in the morning before 10:30 a.m.
I can't. I'm out of town from Wednesday, Thursday until Friday at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So it will 2 o'clock, and it should be a hard stop at 1 hour,
Yeah.
if we need that much.
I will.
Stephanie, is
I will
that bad
need
for
to
you?
see.
2. 2?
yeah, I mean, if I can hopefully it's not, it shouldn't be something that's a really, like,
No.
requires really robust
No. Well, we hope during that meeting,
discussion.
during that
or
hearing.
Are we really on the fence about it?
We'll
or-
get, we're not making any decisions except for the extension of the moratorium, of course, yes or no. But we
Right.
will have some discussion about what's been done to date,
Okay.
that kind of thing, just so we
But
know.
we're expecting to,
Yeah, but we're expecting to get some input as to
I'm
what's
sure
been
we
done
will,
to
yeah.
date. So it's not complete, we're not done. So that's, we have to contemplate extension, and unfortunately, it has to be 180 days by
okay.
statute.
I mean, that's fine, as long as, I mean, it may be that I'm participating from my phone
Oh,
somewhere.
okay.
But,
Okay. Well, I'd like to have 4 of us. It would be better than just having 3
I'll
of
be
us,
here in
obviously.
person.
Yeah. Stephanie, does that work for you? And Tom, I know you're out.
And if I can call in, I will. I just don't know. I am traveling on Friday.
All right, well, then we'll post Friday at 2 PM for a 1-hour hard stop.
Do we have Josh here?
We've already talked to him, and yes, he will be here. He also has written, I believe he's written some treatise to Jeremy already. I haven't seen it, about what the Harbor Committee has done to date. But I haven't seen it yet. We'll all see it on
I
Friday.
haven't seen it either.
Well, we'll see it on the packet for Friday. But so we'll have to post for 2 o'clock, Janice, for Friday. All right?
Thank
Good.
you for
All right, thank you.
accommodating my
Be
schedule. I'm
advertised?
sorry.
Doesn't it have to be
That's
advertised 7
what I
days in
said.
advance?
No. No, according to Bill, no. According to Bill, it has to be, I think, what are the terms, reasonable notice?
Reasonable notice.
Yeah. It's a
And
little
we've
different.
talked about this
Yeah, it's-
multiple times.
Yeah, it's a little different. I was surprised, too.
Because they're always getting us on this 10 business days. or
Well, I
whatever.
know it's 7. You're right,
Like
it's 7.
a paper of
It's
general
7.
circulation.
And that's still the case, but usually I'm used to 7 business days, which would have put us right to, right to the deadline of the 15th, but that's.
What, are we going to advertise it in a daily paper or something? Is that how we're getting?
Same advertising mechanisms, right?
I believe he said, because it's a moratorium statute, it's different than what.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's no specific
Yeah,
direction in there.
right. Yeah, then we had Bill review that. I was surprised, too. Anyway, let's move on to then, we don't need a motion for that. But let me write down 2 PM before I wind up coming at 3. Okay. Item B on the action items list is the approval of a new taxi cab business license for Wolfie's Wheels at 27 Start Road.
47.
47.
47, I can't read. 47 Start Road. And any questions on this application from anybody, or is anybody here to talk to it? Would you like to give us a brief treatise on the, what are we calling it? Wolfie's Wheels? I love the name.
That's great. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks for having more
This
than one service.
application, though, this is another one. It's been a while since I've read the questions
Yeah,
that we
Yeah.
ask.
yeah.
I mean, it's just unacceptable, the way, the questions that we're asking people.
Where's my chair?
Like, it would be good to roll that. I'm sure it's in the ordinance or something, but when we review all that, like the questions that we're asking people.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Agree.
thanks for going along with that.
Please introduce yourself and give us a,
Members of the Select Board, Audra. Chuck Overholt, 47 Start Road. I represent Wolfie's Wheels, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the application or our intent at this time that the Select Board may have.
just interested, will this be a one taxi?
One taxi, one car, myself as the driver.
And-
Our intent is to serve only Camden. And people have told me they wait up to 2 hours for a cab. And for another cab company, if you didn't make the reservation by 4 o'clock Friday, you had no hope of getting a cab on Monday. So we see a need for it here. We're interested in serving just the Camden area and the Camden residents, possibly Rockport, although you would know better than I if I need a separate application and approval to
Right.
take people to Rockport or not. We would be happy to take people to the airport. We're not interested in serving Rockland or Belfast. And we want to make it affordable and quick for people of Camden.
When you say take to the airport, which airport are you?
Househead.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
No?
So careful. My mind jumps to Portland, so.
Yeah, and I'm already booking
If they
Bangor.
want to go to Portland, we could talk about it, but it's
Okay.
going to take the cab out of service for
A long
an
time.
afternoon
A long time,
or a
yeah.
morning, yes, sir.
Make the price right, that's
Yeah.
all. Okay, cool.
That's just wonderful. I've heard that exact same thing so much from people, and even in discussions about trying to revive Camden nightlife a little bit.
Yeah.
That's often just something that comes up over and over again, so,
A lot of people would utilize it for rides home from
absolutely.
the bars, and we could help, hopefully keep intoxicated people off the road that way as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a meeting with Randy Gagney this afternoon about my intent, and this is by no means to be construed as an endorsement by him, but he was happy to see the service, and he thought it was a good idea.
See.
How are the residents of Camden contacting you? Will there be a number? Will
There'll be
you
a
use
phone number.
apps? Will
Yeah.
okay.
There'll be a phone number for now. Yeah, I'm just feeling it all out
Sure.
myself. I haven't really done anything, waiting on approval from the select board before I get the signage. The car has to
Oh,
be
sure.
properly
Yes.
licensed and have the appropriate names on it and things like that. And we would get a dedicated cell phone number
For the
for the
car.
cab, yes, sir.
About how long do you think would, from now getting approval, assuming approval, that you would execute the start of the business?
A couple of days.
Wow.
Yeah, we're ready to move on it tomorrow, should the select board choose to approve it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good news.
People call you at any time, or?
Well, I'm going to say yes, but of course, to add cars and drivers, which we do, hopefully we'll have to do, those have to be approved by the select board as well. So
Correct.
maybe within 30 days, you might see us adding a driver and a car. So,
Have you had similar experience before?
only riding.
You're writing, okay.
Yeah, in the cabs. I have had an occasion to take cabs, and I was surprised at the length of time I had to wait to get a cab. And I thought about the Uber thing. I did register with Uber to try it, but they take half of what you get paid, and I just didn't see any sense in that.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
And I also think that not everybody uses apps to hail a cab, and
Right.
and having a good old cell phone number where people can have that on the fridge or is going to be
Exactly.
super valuable to a lot of residents in Camden.
Exactly.
So
And-
thank you so much for doing
Yeah,
this, because this
Randy
is a
asked
really
for
needed service.
a pile of business cards to, give his officers. We'll make sure all the bars have them. We'll make sure the concierges at all the hotels have them.
Sounds great.
So, yeah.
Allison?
Would this maybe be something that we could talk about with our general assistance program at some point too, with just the, trust fund applications or people that need help getting rides
Yep.
places? If we could come up with some kind of thing where the town would have an account
An
with,
account, yeah,
Absolutely.
would be,
it's a
Absolutely.
great idea.
We talked about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's
Absolutely.
see how it goes. At some point, maybe we can approach the town and see if they would be
Okay.
willing to help people who can't maybe afford the rides or need the rides.
right, I mean, that we would be in the position to be able to do that now. I mean,
That'd be lovely.
Right,
I would be happy to be able to provide that service.
right.
Great.
Great. Well, to cut the suspense, I'd like the board to make a motion to approve this. Second?
Second.
Sophie, second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this great idea?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank the board.
Okay. Item 4C, the approval of the bid award for the 2022 electric truck for Camden Fire Department. I believe you've seen in your packet, there is a, thank you, Chris, for providing the total bid for the truck, for the, and appurtenances, which it seems to be, what is it, a total of, Chris, why don't you just give us the totals, please, just so everybody can hear it. Total with all of the appurtenances, electric chargers, whatever you have to do for this electric vehicle. And just for everybody's recollection while Chris is sauntering up there, the last budget we had and approved, what was discussed was that we would buy a new vehicle, and if available, it would be electric. For a time period, we thought it wasn't available because of the huge backlog that Ford is facing. I mean, we're talking about a year. Well, somehow we won the lottery and wound up getting a truck available, I think, October as the possible date. But to that end, it was a $60,000 line item on the budget, but the total is
65,807.
right, 65, and we have some, I presume we'll use the delta and the 5,000 from the reserve. Or not.
The fire department has an equipment reserve
Right.
in their operational,
And
or
they
not equipment reserve, but they have a line in their operational budget for equipment that
So
could
we'll
be
allocate the
used.
delta between the 60,000 and the 65 and change. So there are the questions here that the board would like to ask the chief while we have his attention. Tom?
What, do you favor this over the gasoline trucks that we saw in last week's packet?
I think it's going to be just as effective.
And just to be clear, this is not quote-unquote a fire pumper or anything like that. This is a pickup truck
Just a
that is
pickup truck.
utilized, well, principally by you, for getting around to where you have to go. So I just want to make sure people understand we're not dealing with a fire truck per se.
Correct.
That'd be quite a deal on
You
it.
think?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 times
I'd
that.
question if we
Right.
want to buy it if it was.
Chris, my math came out a little different. I have 65,087, not 65,807. The EV charger for $1,000 that's probably, I mean, possible, but not probable. But the numbers aren't really my biggest concern. I think the bigger concerns, my feeling on electric vehicles is, this is like version 1.0. And I think there's going to be a lot of bugs that get worked out in the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm not so sure that the town, although I do like the idea of the town taking a leadership role, I'm not so sure, sometimes private investors for speculation is better than public. I don't see the options on this here. With the 2 gasoline trucks, they even put in a picture, described a crew cab, 4-wheel drive, and all the options. Did we receive anything like that on this truck?
So I sent
The spec.
yes, I provided the spec.
So we have the specifications for the electrical additions, 550 from Yankee Communications, but for the truck, we don't actually have anything. We don't have,
Or specifications?
no window sticker, no pictures, no specs, nothing.
I did send those.
I'll check out how it was in there.
There are attachments in the memo. It says attachments, but
They're not included?
they're not included in the package.
Yeah. I see that.
Oh, actually, it's,
It's-
no, they are attached. It's the Yankee Communication. But on the specs on the truck, they're not in this package.
That's correct.
Yeah. Do we have them, didn't we have them in the
I
previous
sent them
package?
along. I checked that this morning.
Do you mind if I look?
Other questions while Tom's looking at that? Any other questions?
Is the charger, the EV, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm more of a comment.
To punish you, I'll let Allison go first.
Yes,
Go ahead.
punish me.
So this isn't my area of expertise either, although I definitely like the idea of using an electric vehicle, and it seems somewhat low stakes to me, because I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that if it turns out to be this, really buggy kind of thing, that there wouldn't be anything to stop us from selling it, and that, if after 6 months or however long, it was like, there's something we didn't anticipate, the resale value, in my mind, with the demand being what it is, it seems like the resale value would just be incredibly high. I definitely hear what you're saying, Tom, especially since you have so much more knowledge about this. But like, what are like the kinds of things that you're thinking might like come up?
So, I guess first question is, where would it be serviced?
Rockland Ford,
So they have experience with,
as much as anyone else.
because it looks like they're actually purchasing it out of another Ford dealership out of Massachusetts, is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
That's just what happens with purchases like that.
I mean, that's a big concern for me. So for the two gasoline trucks that we were in last week's packet, we had a Dodge and both Dodges, and they were 51,000 and change, 50,000 and change.
Plus extras.
And that's the question, do they need the same upfit?
Yes. Yep.
So basically, the difference here is about $8,000, $7,000 or $8,000 from the gasoline to the electric.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
Oh, it's more than
it's
that.
actually less than that, because, so the price from the Ford dealer there includes spray and bed liner toolboxes. So those weren't included in the Dodges either. So it's probably, it's probably close to the $5,000 difference between the gas trucks
Gas electric.
and the electric.
Not including the cost of the EV charger.
Correct.
Yeah, plus the bells and whistles you need to add to it, which is $7,500 also. That would be on both, electric or gas.
Right.
Correct.
But, yeah, Stephanie.
Do we know any other fire departments that have used a truck like that in fire service?
A truck, no, but the town of Kennebunk has a Tesla that they use. Falmouth has Priuses that they use for admin vehicles.
Have we looked at the battery efficiency in the colder months with the lights and braking? And I think the diminishing value is like 41% of the battery life. And I don't know how long they last, but you have a 12-hour fire, which happens quite often, and you have
Fortunately,
to,
not quite often, but.
enough to be concerned about. We can't have you stranded there, for one, and two, it's just the safety factor is my only. Because that's a lot of lights and things going on that, and you certainly shouldn't have to be worried about, is my battery running out? Do I need to put another truck where this one's parked to keep the traffic flowing, or
Yeah, so
what have you?
obviously, some of that can be, that's just management, some of that is. And certainly, it's new technology, so there's a lot of questions that are unknown. How does the cold weather affect it? In the research I've done, it doesn't seem like it's that much. There are other, Great Barrington, Rhode Island, recently put in the Ford Mach 3s as their police supervisor vehicles. There are a bunch of police departments in Nova Scotia that have Teslas on the road for their police officers. So it's not like this is brand new.
Right.
And like I said, Kennebunk does, Falmouth has hybrids or electric vehicles.
Right.
The DOT has electric vehicles.
Is it, I'm sorry, Sophie, go ahead.
So we're going to put a charger at the fire station? And is this a truck that you drive home with? So we're going to put a charger at your home too?
That's what worries me.
No.
I would completely recommend we put a charger at your home. If that truck is going to be doing,
Yeah.
I think it's
That
worth
would-
it.
You know, I think that's something that we need to maybe look, once we see, you know, how much it's used, how much,
Right.
what the battery condition is like and things like that. I think that's something we maybe look at next year, but I think
Next budget cycle?
if we go with the electric, I think we ought to maybe see how it works for 6 months and see if that's something we need to do.
Yeah, out
I
of.
mean, we were asked to look
I
into
mean,
the
how much-
electric
how much
option,
are the
so.
chargers?
Oh, I agree with Tom. I don't think $1,000 will cover a
Yeah.
fast charge station.
You can buy a value charger for $700, but that's not going to get you installation.
Right.
No.
You have to run a circuit there. That doesn't include any of the other materials or the labor.
Right.
What color is this truck, since I didn't see the spec?
So we had to kind of rank the colors, and it's a gray truck because at the time we ranked the colors, I'm not even sure currently they have a red truck available. So,
Would you paint it red or white?
no,
You would just leave it?
yeah,
The gasoline truck was going to be black, I think, which
yeah.
I agree.
objected to also, in my mind at least. I
Me too,
I
but
was
that's all
like,
that's there's, Randy and I had a conversation today. Audra was in on the call. There's not much available out there.
Yeah, Randy's
We
having
started looking at
similar
this-
issues with
We
cruisers.
started looking at this 2 years ago.
I remember.
There's nothing out there.
Yeah.
So how long would you expect this truck to be in service?
The one I'm driving right now is a 2010, so it's been in service for 12 years. It was with the police department for 3 or 4 years before we got it. So I would say 10 years.
And the next question is, how long would this last? I don't think anybody knows.
Nobody knows.
Well, I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of electric vehicles on the, am I on a, can maybe somebody explain the difference to me between this electric truck and all the electric vehicles that people have been driving for years?
Well,
I
Well,
mean, like a Nissan Leaf or a, I understand there are some differences in the capacity, but
quality
there are-
too.
Sure, I don't know if the Nissan Leaf is lower, but you see people have been using them for quite a long time, and it's, I mean, it's not technology that just came out this year.
But it's not proven technology either.
How long does it take for something to be proven?
I bet it'd be 15, 20 years.
I mean, none of these vehicles are completely,
Well,
we have problems with all vehicles, even
Yeah, the issue-
new ones. I know people that just brought brand-new vehicles that end up in the,
Right,
so
right.
I think we need to keep,
Well, I think it's a longer term, my longer term view of looking at EVs is the same, when it's similar to a solar system. It's going to last, could last 10, 15, 20 years. What are you going to do with it when it's done? This recycling thing is huge for cadmium lithium problems, so there's a long-term problem no matter what you do. The only reason why, I would consider electric here is because the discussion during the budget cycle was just that. And I didn't totally agree with it then. It says if one is available, we would buy electric. And that's why the 60,000 was in the budget to cover what we thought might be the increased cost over gas for the basic vehicle. That's why it's 60K. So I get that in the back of my head. But I have a tendency of leaning towards what Tom is saying, and I have some trepidation about I like the idea of delaying, because this is your vehicle you need to get around. You put a lot of hours into being fire chief, and some of those come from your home. And that's why I think in a very short time period, we need to approve this with the idea that it's going to be a second charger. I find it very difficult to believe that you won't need that to make sure she's well charged, but when you need to do what you need to do. Yeah, exactly. But
The technology is moving quick. Right now, the panels that we're putting on roofs now are far superior to the panels that were going on roofs just a few years ago.
Yeah.
I expect this to go that same way. I'm in favor of it, except that I think it's a little early.
Agree. I don't think it's a matter of if the truck is needed. I think it's a matter of, is this the time to have the electric vehicle, knowing the use that it's going to get and how valuable it is? I mean, Chris, you're first on the fire scene, 98% of the time? I mean, we need you to be there.
I'm not worried about it. I've driven one. I went up to Quirk in Belfast. I've driven the truck. I'm not too concerned about it. I
okay.
understand the concern about the batteries. I've had looking into this, the battery technology, I think, is going to change within 3 to 5 years, right?
I agree. Big time. Yeah, that's the core of it. But
Right.
What are we risking here? Probably not a heck of a lot.
I don't think we're risking a whole lot.
I don't think we're risking a whole lot, and especially because it's not a fire truck. That's why I said that earlier. It's you getting to what you need to do as chief.
And there are, it's a little off topic, but they're starting to build fire engines that are all electric.
They are.
City of Los Angeles has some. Toronto just ordered a bunch.
Yep.
Should we make a motion to?
Well, first of all, to whatever motion, I would suggest to the board that this is total of 65,807. I would add a little cushion to that because of that. I don't think that $1,000 for the charger is enough. I think it's at least 1,500 or 2,000. But that's just my opinion. We can just leave it in there as a not to exceed.
So I included the cost of the charger in the public,
Yes.
in the public safety building maintenance line. I think we're probably all set. I don't think we should have to add anything else there if it does end up being $1,500.
Oh, okay, okay.
I
All
think we
right,
need to add
okay.
more there.
I mean,
Yeah, that
building
ma-
maintenance line, that's.
Yeah, that
that's
makes a
good-
lot of sense.
Because it's not going to
Okay.
be, ideally, it's going to be utilized eventually, maybe by other vehicles, not just.
Kind of the conversation
Yeah,
Randy and I
mm.
were having today is,
Yeah.
you know, if that was-
Again,
it's,
again,
and,
I,
honest, it's tough to get this vehicle. Anyway, there were 200,000 ordered, less than 15,000 are going to be made.
well, at the,
I mean, you're going to be able to, if we don't like it, it's going to be very easy to resell, and it will be,
yeah,
I guess I feel like having sat through that whole
Yep.
budget committee discussion,
Yep.
that would have been the time for a lot of course, the two of you have every right to have whatever opinion, not having sat through that, but for me, the time to raise objections to that.
I agree with
I
you.
think, they
I
had good
agree.
reasons for supporting that and asking for it to be electric. We've done a great job following through and delivering on that, and I think if it turns out to be problematic, it will be, I trust that there'll be a contingency plan for any incident that comes up, and that it would be a learning experience.
Who makes that decision, though? I mean,
makes what decision?
to sell the vehicle? That's not an easy decision to make. I have a lot of vehicles on the road, and deciding when it's time to cut one, is it, stop investing money in it or whatever?
Well, this would become an issue of performance and whether it works for the chief's use. If it doesn't, we would have to consider selling it.
So I
then it
think
comes
he
before
would-
us?
he would bring
We have
that.
to authorize another vehicle?
Well,
Purchase?
yeah, you'd have to replace the vehicle, absolutely. But it also has to be in the budget.
So there would be a revenue line, and this happens all the time with the police vehicles get changed out. What is it, every 3 years, 5 years, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
And so there's usually, something goes in the budget to buy one, and then there's a consideration of the value that vehicle is going to have. I mean, in that case, it's usually the value's been significantly depleted at that time because the car's sort of at the end of its life, but.
Yeah,
mean-
I think, Alison, your point, and I feel the same way. I think I have a lot of trepidation in many ways, but we had this discussion at budget time. And remember, that's why I prefaced this whole thing with, during the budget discussion, there was preponderance of saying, if available, we will buy an electric truck. And it wasn't available, and that's why we have to get, I'm not even sure if the gas trucks are available now.
We would have to rebid those.
That's what I thought.
Actually, one of them, I don't believe is on I looked in the inventory today, I don't believe it's on the lot at Shepherd's anymore.
These are moving fast, too.
In the Quirk one, it actually hadn't even been built yet. They pulled it off the wrong list and
Oh, okay.
don't even have a build date for that one.
Suggest if there's a motion the board would like to make, I would suggest we make it for $66,000 even, which $6,000 not to exceed would come out of the equipment reserve funds for the fire department.
Is there any other need for that equipment? Oh, second for the purpose of discussion.
You haven't motioned yet.
No, I moved it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Did you- And somebody
I said
second?
so moved, and she
Sorry.
seconded for the purpose of discussion.
Because I thought you were saying, wait, you have to, oh geez,
You talking about the old truck?
I don't know where I was going.
What was- You said
I completely
surplus.
forgot what I
You
was.
said surplus. So you were-
Were you
Oh, we're
going to
spending-
ask if
yes,
that
yes. Is
fire
there
truck
some-
reserve?
Yeah, where is it that we're getting the extra money from?
It's
Are there-
the equipment reserve funds for the fire department.
And there is no other need for that anticipated at this?
There's 15,000 in that budget right at the moment. So if we took 6 out, there'd be 9 left. Now the question.
We currently don't have any anticipation for them. I
Okay,
do anticipate having some more funds go into those when we sell engine 6. We have a forestry skid unit that we want to sell, as well as this pickup truck, whatever value that might bring the town.
okay. So I was just going to suggest that we could consider using contingency, but
I
it
thought
doesn't.
you brought up a point last time about what they're going to do with the existing truck.
And I think that just got answered for me, that's
Okay.
going to be sold
As
to the
surplus.
highest bidder. We'll start spreading the word. Piece of
Okay.
Camden history.
I think it's important to,
Or should we leave,
At least one person is interested in buying it for a parts truck.
oh, that'd be good.
Is it, it's running right now and stuff, or what are you doing now?
It's running right now. Its sticker runs out at the end of this month, and Herrick's Garage is not going to put another one on it.
Don't say that here. True.
I'm in it right now.
Full disclosure.
I know, I'm just kidding.
What happens if what's going to be the recourse of the end of this month?
Yes.
So we have to have something in place by September 30th.
Any
You have to have a
further?
plan. It would be
There's
nice
Wolfie's
Well,
wheels.
it'd be nice to have a plan. The electric truck's not going to arrive until,
October something.
Wolfie lives right around the corner. I'll just call him.
That's why I just got an email from somebody that said that.
Close the vote. The gentleman with the hat back there wanted to make a comment. I wasn't ignoring you. Do you want to say something?
Hi, Chief.
How are you?
Good. Brad Dodge, live in Camden. My question is the warranty on the batteries, because they do not last that much. And I know that Ford has a problem with the batteries.
Yeah.
So that's what I was concerned about.
Good question.
I can't speak to the warranty on the batteries.
Yeah, I couldn't. I don't think
I
anybody
know that the
can.
batteries, personally, that if you keep them on charge a long period of time, they do go down and wear out the batteries a lot quicker.
They get memories,
Yes, they do.
and that's not a good thing.
Batteries give memories. Again, it's how you condition
You
them.
gotta, you gotta stay a little closer to the microphone
It's
so that
how
people
you,
can.
how you condition them and how you use it.
Yep.
It's,
Which we know because on account of the
All right.
radios, if people leave them plugged in,
Thank you.
batteries go dead.
Thank you very much. Good question. Any other questions from the board? All right, move to the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? 4-1. Thank,
3-2.
oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Again, vote. All those in favor? 3. Opposed? 2. Make sure we get it right. And make sure I get it right. Thanks, Chief. Thank you very much. Let me get back to my agenda. All right. That was the next item on our action items list, if you could bring Forrest on, please, is the appointment of the slate of nominees to the Maganto River Advisory Committee. And we'll bring on Forrest Bell, please. There's his name. Hello, Forrest, can you hear us well?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Very well. Thank you so much for
You bet.
the work. We obviously have in our packet a slate of 9 proposed recommended committee members. Did you want to say anything regarding the process, the development, or anything like that? It would be appreciated.
Yeah, sure. Just a quick couple of minutes. Obviously you have everything in your packets. It's been a busy couple of weeks. My recommendation is to call this the Maganto River Citizens Advisory Committee. So that's a little bit different than 2 weeks ago when I spoke to you last. 9-member committee. We had 22 applicants. And the recommendation for Sophie Romana as the non-voting chair, and then an elected vice chair. The criteria is listed there. I think you'll notice when you look at the list of the names, broad-based backgrounds were very high on the list, and I think we've attained that. And then 3 meetings initially, and the point I really want to make sure that I make for everybody is that this advisory committee will develop a public input process. I held back from making a specific recommendation at this point because I feel like that's better done by the committee, and there will be some sort of a process. It just probably won't happen in the first few weeks as the committee gets organized and gets the bylaws settled, reviews the gap analysis, and then obviously the public input would be decided within the next month or 2. And then that's really it for the highlights. You have the list of names there, and entertain any questions.
Board?
Okay. So are all of these members or recommendations, are they Camden registered voters?
I don't believe they are. I put in my recommendation. I think, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think in your packet it says a business in Camden, a resident of Camden, or working in Camden. I think 7 out of 9 are Camden residents, Stephanie.
Other questions?
How did you settle on 9 from 22 applicants?
Yeah, great question. 9 was settled, before any applicants, in my mind at least, before any applicants came in. And that's based on, a few decades of experience working with committees of this type, and just a larger number. A lot of times you don't get good participation from everybody on there. So it's sort of the largest maximum number that I've experienced, where everyone can have a really high level of participation in a 90-minute or 2-hour meeting.
Other questions? Yeah, Tom. Yeah, would you please? It's just for the speaker reason, Tom.
Right. Hi, Forrest.
Hello.
I'm Tom Rothwell, owner of the Camden Deli. I applied. One of my biggest concerns is I would feel comfortable, really comfortable as a business owner, knowing that there was some stakeholders on the advisory board. Right now, I looked at the list. I really didn't see any business owners in town or stakeholders that will be impacted primarily by the Montgomery Dam. I'm one of those businesses that will be impacted by decisions made, and I hope that somehow you would get 1 or 2 business people in downtown, because everyone in downtown will be impacted by this decision. So I think it's only fair.
Yeah, understood. I mean, there are some business representatives on there, or people that have that in their backgrounds. Ellen Reynolds and Tyler Smith are listed. I should also point out that there are members that have an affiliation related to, land on the river, including, Susan Todd with the Camden Public Library, and Rick Thackeray, as the a school board member, which has a very large tract of land on the river. So you tried to get a cross section. I definitely appreciate your opinion. I'm a business owner myself, so I hear that, and again, trying to get a good cross section.
So there was no stakeholders along the Maganto River property owners on this advisory committee, from what I understand. Richard Thackeray is part of the school.
The Smith family.
The Smith family?
Owns.
Okay, so the Smith family was the only person.
I don't know. I know the Smiths are. I know that for a fact.
So they're going to represent all the businesses, just that one individual.
Well, no.
No, that's not what's being said at all.
I think, Forrest, you stated something about there are people who, other than Tyler Smith, that have business affiliation. Did I hear that correctly? That have business?
Correct, yeah. Alan Reynolds, and then the other 2 are, not private businesses, but the affiliation, of the library and the school district as landowners.
Alan Reynolds owns a business in downtown on the river?
No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that.
No, okay, that's my concern. There's nobody representing businesses or stakeholders. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Tyler Smith owns a business on the river, so if that's the criteria, that downtown on the river, that is, I totally
How about
agree
on the
with
McGonagall side, the Montgomery side, Montgomery Dam area? Nothing.
He's talking downtown.
Oh, you're talking on just
Well,
one side of Main Street.
There's a lot of emphasis on Montgomery Dam, and right now we have no stakeholders.
But this is about the river.
Yeah,
This is the river project.
right. Yeah, it's a broad,
Yeah,
Yeah, very broad. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Tom, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other comments, board?
I mean, I think the part of this that is going to be key is figuring out a way that, just like with lots of other Camden committees, that it doesn't become something that excludes voices, but is something that can better include more people. One of the things we've been doing with the Conservation Commission is, having a core group, but then also inviting subcommittees and connections with other groups. There's literally no way that everybody who's interested, I mean, I'm a little ticked off. I want to be on the committee too. I understand that, I know that there are many people that I think would be good on this committee. I am really fighting the urge to be nitpicky about this and to say, well, where's the history person or this or that, but we're gonna get too big very quickly. And so I guess that what I would ask is that a big part of this be figuring out what type of public input process is going to be meaningful and useful to everyone. And it can't just be people on the committee. It's the people in the committee figuring out how do we collect meaningful input from a wide variety of people.
So if I can answer, and Forrest, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is a starting point. We have to start somewhere, and it's imperfect in many ways, but at least we can start having a meeting, and Forrest has a date in mind, actually, to bring the committee together to start working. I think we have to look at this as the first stepping stone, and one of the things we've been discussing with Forrest is also to have an ecosystem map of all the other stakeholders, organizations that are interested in the development of the river and bring them along. And we cannot design everything at the onset. We really have to start working together. So I completely agree, and we have to make decisions. We have to have a format that allows good, productive conversations, that brings different voices together, and that little by little, I'm hoping that we can have other forums where we can invite other stakeholders and have a wider and broader discussion. That is also the idea behind this Citizens Advisory Committee. So that's how we're going to start, and everybody's voice on the committee is equal and important, and let's get to work and then start designing how we want to engage with other communities along the river, with other organizations, with other stakeholders, what public engagement we want to design. Let's not the best be the enemy of the good. I know there's a lot of excitement. I was shocked that we got that many number of applications, people who want to volunteer their time and who are interested in the river. And that reassures me in the sense that it means that it's a really important project. So let's start. Let's see how it works. Let's keep in mind that we can amend things, we can change things, we can adapt them as we go along. But I would respectfully urge the select board to give us the whistle at the start line, so Forrest can start working, so the committee can start meeting, and we can start having those conversations and work on this project.
Yeah, Tom. While you're walking up, I was just going to say, I think I think one of the most, we've dealt a lot with committee discussions in the last couple of years of the select board in town. And one of the factors, is my experience, I think is very core, is how a committee deals with public input, because you can't close that out. We won't. I know, of course, you said you need to develop that process because you have to assimilate a lot of information. That's what an effective committee does. And hopefully the committee never gets to a point of having to vote on something. The consensus naturally rises to the top. That's what I would want to watch this committee and how it formulates and how it executes with giving all the factions, the feeling that they're having a voice and their input, their valuable input is being considered. That's just how I feel. Tom, go ahead.
I just, I've been for the last 3.5 years, we've been discussing this. There really has been no stakeholder engagement. And I was really excited for this advisory committee, hoping that finally businesses and stakeholders and property owners will be represented. Right now, I don't feel too comfortable with this advisory committee. I don't really care to be on this committee because I am for one option, and that is to preserve, maintain, and restore Montgomery Dam. So I don't know if I'd be the best candidate for this. I feel I am because I feel, my family bought this beautiful property overlooking the falls and this beautiful mill pond 31 years ago. It was incredible. And over that 31 years, I've seen it deteriorated. The town hasn't spent 1 cent maintaining it. And I know what it looks like and what it means to the town and what it brings to the town with the visitors, because I hear it all day long. I know most of you on this panel disagrees with me. Excuse me, I'm talking. I've listened to you. Okay? I know where you guys are headed. For the last 3.5 years, I know your opinion on this dam, and you made it very clear recently on this grant after the resolution. I was really excited about the resolution because I felt that finally the town is going to actually vote and on protecting, preserving, and maintaining the dam, and now we have this grant that is approved for partial and full removal. Am I correct?
No.
Is it approved?
We're going to
Wait,
talk
first of all, we're not in that
about that.
Yeah, I know, we're on the next.
We'll get to that
we're on
in a
the
minute,
next
Tom.
one.
We'll get to that in a minute.
It's all related, though.
well,
Okay,
of
so
course,
it's hard to talk about one
understood.
thing and not lead
No,
into
I
another.
agree, I agree.
And come back and forth.
I agree.
But it's right there. It's the next issue on the agenda. But I would feel
Thank you.
more comfortable if we had someone representing businesses and stakeholders. And right now, I don't.
More comment.
So, Tom, I understand your concern. My hope and my wish for this advisory committee is that people don't come to this committee with their own concerns and their own agenda.
Right.
We want people to come and exchange ideas and points of view and
Right.
raise to a consensus and understand that, yes, businesses have a stake in this issue. Of course they do.
Yep.
So are non-business residents of Camden.
Of
So are
course.
people in different entities. So even though you feel that business owners directly on the dam are not represented in the advisory committee right now, I can assure you that your interests are part of the group.
Okay.
And
Well-
what as chair, if the recommendation goes through, this is my role, is to make sure that we come together on the consensus base and that every point of view is taken into account.
My wish 3.5 years ago, when we were introduced to 3 options and they got one option, okay?
So respectfully, 3.5 years ago.
I was open to a lot.
I agree. 3.5 years ago, I was not on the select board.
Okay.
The second thing
You are now,
is,
though.
I am now. And I would also like you to give me a little bit of credit for working on this process and for really having an open mind. I don't think I have ever expressed any opinion on what to do with the dam as I sat on the select board for the past 14 months.
And we'll find out with
And-
this grant.
And
All
I
right.
want, no, but
No.
what I think we need to have more information, we need to have more public discussions, we need to understand what we want to do with the river. I think the way I look at it, the river had a purpose, a commercial and industrial purpose that it no longer serves.
Yeah.
We need to invent and create a new purpose that brings the town together. That's the energy I'm putting behind this
I
project.
want to get back to the agenda item because I agree with the point that was made about a starting point. This is just a starting point. It has to include the public. It has to, all factions have to be listened to and effectively assimilated into the thinking of the committee. That's what it has to be. But I want to move on, but go ahead, Tom. You had to say anything.
Thank you. Tom, you're a member of the Save the Dam Falls Committee.
I am, but I represent myself, too.
Is that group that you're a part of, is that represented on this list? Members of the Save the Dam Falls Committee?
I believe there's one, yes.
Is that Ray?
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, Tom, when I applied, I applied as a stakeholder.
Right,
Yeah,
understood.
yep.
But to your question, the answer is yes.
Okay. Do we have any other members that represent specific groups? Anybody else on this list for us that represents any other groups?
The purpose was to try to make this as individual as possible as opposed to representing groups. There's obviously some crossover. People serve on multiple groups, multiple committees. So there's some groups represented, but my recommendation was not to have it, 9 groups sitting at the table, rather a cross-section of citizen representatives, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So, but there is, just to follow up on that, it looked to me like, I think I remember it being said at some point that there was going to be at least one member from Save the Dam Falls, and there was going to be at least one member from Restore Maganto.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what people heard too when they applied. Is Courtney?
Yeah.
Yeah, Courtney Cease is a member, is on the Restore Maganto group, correct?
And that's the only name I see
Well,
there. I do kind of like that a lot of these people, I actually don't know what they think
me too.
about this, and I think and I can see why you might want Sophie on there to be the liaison and not me, even though people have heard a lot from me, so it's maybe, I do kind of like that there are a lot of people that I actually don't know what they think about this.
I got to bring this back to the item here. Remember, we have to remember, we talked about hiring a consultant to do the work to make this recommendation to the board. And I believe they've accomplished that. Tom, do you have another question?
Just my last point is, the stakeholder thing. We've used that word repeatedly, when we've talked to the general public about this. We've emphasized that we want stakeholders involved, that stakeholders are, because honestly, there's a whole bunch of people who this doesn't have a lot of an effect on. As much effect as it does on stakeholders, that word we continually use. And so I think Tom made a good point there that stakeholders ought to be really well represented. Stakeholders like Tom ought to be really well represented on this committee.
All right, we have the slate of 9 on board. Yes.
Deb Chapman from the Knox Mill Association.
And then I'm going to cut off the comment period.
Jean Brewer, Camden resident. I just wanted to ask, I don't have a list of the names. Could you read off the names of all these
It's
people?
in our packet.
I know, but I don't have the packet handy. If somebody wants to hand me it, that's fine too, but you only,
no.
I think you went through 5 names. I've been writing them down, but it would be nice to have all of them. And I totally support Tom too. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, we will.
So
Go ahead.
the 9 proposal members are Ray Anderson, Courtney Cease, Deborah Chapman, Lynette Elfie Owen, Ellen Reynolds.
Sec, I can't write that fast. Deborah Chapman, what's the next one?
Lynette Elfie Owen,
Okay.
Ellen Reynolds, Tyler Smith, Seth Taylor, Richard Thackeray, and Susan Todd.
All right.
And I also want to add one last thing. I know you want,
Well,
but I want to commend Forrest for paying particular attention to one thing that is very dear to my heart. We have 9 members with almost parity between men and women, and that was very important to me that we had a good representation of women, because I see a lot of committee where few women are represented. So thank you, Forrest, for taking my consideration into account.
All right, well, we have these 9 people recommended by our consultant. Again, I'm going to repeat, that's what we hired them for. Just as a starting point, as Sophie suggests, is a long way to go. But I think that we have to either move to approve or send, or we could also send our consultant back for a relook or whatever. But do I have a motion to approve this list of 9?
And the recommendations, I think it's together.
Oh, yes, and the recommendations, yes, the whole packet.
Yes, I just also, sorry, I just still do want to ask like another quick question
Why
or
don't we do
two.
it during discussion?
Well, because I see the point that is being made about the connection between the grant and it is very difficult to talk about these things just in a total vacuum. And so to me, getting the grant is very reassuring because, and I can see why some of the language that was in that very brief press release from NIFWIF, if you just read that, you're like, oh. But to me, if we didn't get that grant and we were approving this committee, it would feel like sort of the end all and the be all, like this is going to be this one little thing that doesn't have any money to continue, and it's going to, maybe be the only consequential thing. What getting the grant allows us to do, if you take the time to read the full narrative, it really heavily emphasizes lots of the feedback that we've heard. I will say that I insisted on writing a portion of that myself because I wanted it to be very clear that to the grant agency that, in a way that maybe some consultants or grant writers haven't heard, I've heard there's not consensus around this, even though there's been a lot of work done in, certain directions. It says very clearly in there that there has been desire expressed by the community to better understand the broader range of alternatives. There is money actually, we said there is no grant out there that is going to guarantee that they're going to pay for full restoration and preservation exactly as it is. But we said, this is really important. They are willing to pay for us to go down the road.
Two people from being able to talk about the grant.
So what?
With this.
Say what?
So I think we should table the grant discussion.
Yeah.
Because we've actually
I
had
agree.
two
I agree.
people that wanted to talk
We're
about
muddying the
it.
water because all we're doing is what we
Yeah.
committed to in November of last year to put together an advisory committee. We hired a consultant to do it. They've recommended it. We're going to get to all those details. I agree. But they're too.
I just think it would have been easier if it were in a different.
I understand that, but
I
we
agree,
have.
100%, but we
did you
have
second the
stopped two
motion?
people from.
I'm making a motion that we
Sure.
accept the recommendation that Forest Bell Associates, Forest Bell Environmental, Forest, is making of the slate of 9 initial members of the Citizens Advisory Committee,
right.
along with the recommendations listed in the memo.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion. Board.
If it turns out that some of these people, as so very often happens with committees, based on, they're going to have to agree on a meeting time, right? And it may turn
Sure.
out that for some of these people, they can't be available, or they just don't show up for whatever reason. We've had this, and sometimes people look great, but then they don't show up. Is there a process or a contingency plan for that? Because I think we do want it to be well attended.
That's what I would rely on our consultant again to
I
be able
think
to
that's-
consider anybody who cannot function for a lot of reasons that happens. Did we have other candidates that we can, I don't want to put words in your mouth for us, but that we can slot in or somehow consider for replacements, because this is not going to be a one-month committee.
No.
This is going to be multiple months, and they have to understand that too.
That's right, and the list of names that applied is not going anywhere. Those will remain in the file.
Right. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just have one more point to make.
Sure.
So we do have a lot of money on the table right now with the grant. And the fact that not all of these people are Camden residents or even registered voters is really concerning to me, that they're going to have a stake in spending money that they don't have a stake in.
They do not
So
get to spend
that's-
any money. There's no money
They don't.
spending.
This is an advisory committee. They're going to be advising the town, which is consistent, yes, a select board, town, and residents on what actions or action might be taken. Anything, as we've committed to, any recommendations have to go to the voters. So that's going to happen, and we'll discuss the funding of that in a second, which is a totally different subject in my mind. But to your point, yeah.
It's still concerning that we have non-voting members that are not part of the Camden voting community that are on the committee that to make or to put recommendations forward for.
Right.
a huge financial.
Yeah.
Part of this too, we've had a committee that was working before was somewhat, depending on your perspective, the Maganto Dams Advisory Committee. And that we share a watershed with multiple towns. And so one of the things to just look at it as Camden is, I think, sort of missing the point. The idea is, we as elected representatives are here to represent the Camden voters, but I think the quality of the input that we receive depends heavily also on people that work a lot in Camden. I was glad to see that Seth Taylor, for instance, was willing to do it, because that is a person that talks to people all day long who are tourists, who are residents, who are using the watershed, who are, to me, that's a really big value. Getting input from that area is a really big value to Camden residents.
Right. And
that's
we
our
have a
job
lot
to
of other people that have put in, that are Camden voters, that have the same value to offer that aren't on the committee but are voters. That's my point.
Yeah, sure.
And we should listen to them and find a way to, I just don't know where we would stop if there
Well,
are people I want on the committee too.
Forrest, you said that the individuals, well, they may all be voters of Camden, they have an association or have lived here or have had a business here. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Alan Reynolds owns the business, so obviously a taxpayer, and then Seth Taylor, who Allison just mentioned, is a frequent user guide on the river. So there was connections in both those cases.
Yeah. That can be a question. I can see that be a criticism point of the not being quote voters. But I do.
And it was brought up a number of times.
But we have to remember that this is an advisory committee. I keep saying it. They're going to bring recommendations to, here, and then from here to the voters, all 3,000 plus voters, whatever the exact number is.
That's very well understood.
Well, yeah, but I think that's important. I think I don't know these people. I would hope that if I did detail into it, and I won't, because I'm relying on Forrest and his firm, that they would have a cross-section of information and knowledge. There would be value added to looking at all aspects of a river project, as we're calling it today. But I get that there's a political side of the non-voter thing. I get that, but we've talked about it. But one more comment, Tom?
I think that Stephanie's point's well made. We've painted ourselves into a corner here. And even I, since I've been on the board, have been telling people, this advisory committee is the path that we're going on. But to think that at this point we have any political capital to back away from what this group recommends, after we've been trying to depoliticize this issue, and we've all been talking about backing the board out of this issue because the board advanced the agenda maybe too quickly and lost some trust in the public, is something that we all need to really carefully consider here. We are not going to be able to tell the public with a straight face that whatever this advisory committee recommends, we're not going to adopt.
We're jumping the gun. We don't know that. We're jumping the gun. We have to wait. You're presuming that we're going to have something that we're going to reject or accept. I'm not going there. I want data. I want information. I want it to be thorough. I want it to cover all the aspects of any project, not just the dam, but the river itself. And that's what I want to hear before I make any decision that we might want to put in front of the voters for their approval.
So we have one person that's not a Camden resident. We could make that person a non-voting member. I do think that the committee made up of, almost entirely Camden residents. They can go through the, they're going to be taking some input from others too, but if that's the sticking point, I was thinking the other way, that it was really a shame that we didn't have somebody from Lincolnville. because as you know, the Maganto Dams Committee used to have Lincolnville representatives, and so Seth Taylor is also, he's on the board of the Maganto Watershed Association. And so I feel like they really need to be represented in some capacity, and that our relationship with Lincolnville, they pay a third, the Maganto Watershed Association gave the town of Camden those dams, and it's been done, some of the funding has been done with Lincolnville as part of the mechanism set up by the Watershed Association. So there are just so many different layers. That was one benefit to.
But if you're going to include Lincolnville, you're going to have to include Hope. Hope.
Well, Hope doesn't help pay for the dams.
I understand. There was always a question on the dam committee why Hope wasn't
If
involved.
you don't agree with, I would point out that if somebody is great a citizen as Tom Rothwell is, he owns a business here, he lives here. If he didn't live here, I would hope he would still be considered. He's a stakeholder. I'm sorry, but I would hope that Forrest and Company, when they evaluate Tom and others, Tom, like yourself, that you're a stakeholder, and if you happen to live in Lincolnville, I would hope it would still be considered, and I think we have. So with that, we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to go for the vote. So all those in favor of the, what is it exactly? It's the recommendations and for FB Environmental's memo and the 9 members. All those in favor? All those opposed? 3-2. Thank you very much, Forrest. Onward and upward. You may want to hang for the discussion in a minute here. You know what? Instead of, I'm going to come back to the appointment of the state nominee, Audra, to hold it off, because I want to slide right into the, as we call it, the NIFWIF, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, for some explanation to clarify this funding mechanism and why, and the whys and wherefores of it.
Would you like to give the members of the public that came in to speak about it a chance to sort of express their concerns, and then we can talk about it?
I don't care what order we take it in, to tell you the truth, but I just want to underscore that this is a funding source that we've, from my perspective, it's no different than if I and my family got a grant from the state to do environmental improvements to my home only, and that would be solar on the roof and new windows and doors and all that kind of thing. But if it's limited to that, but if my family voted against the solar panels on the roof, you don't do it. You do something else. That's just my simplistic way of thinking of a grant. It's a funding source.
Not up for vote.
So this is,
It's not up for vote.
I mean, just to give a little background information. In, I believe it was April, the select board authorized us applying for this grant to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation.
Correct.
So the way that their process works, we got the original funding in 2019 to do the feasibility study of the entire river.
Right.
That's very broad brush. It doesn't have a lot of, detailed engineering. It just throws out, options at the end for how you could manage different sites along the river. And their process goes that's the first project that they fund, are these broad brush feasibility studies. And then, the next phase is doing sort of more detailed, engineering, design work, public engagement is really important for them.
Right.
And so as part of, trying to figure out what the town wants to do with the river, and a lot of the feedback that we received from, members of the public about concerns about it seemed that the town was heading in one specific direction. The grant really focused on looking at the broad array of options that were presented in the feasibility study, all the way from, full removal to, very much a status quo repair of the existing facilities. And that isn't just for the Montgomery Dam, it's for all the dams along the river. So this is, a really good opportunity. We have a lot of resources that are going to come to the town's disposal. It's a $1.6 million project. So it gives us a lot of opportunities to look at a lot of different options and really fully understand the implications of each all along the river. So that's just sort of the broad introduction to the project. I see this as very good for the advisory committee. because there's a lot of resources that are going to be brought to bear and a lot of different, discussions and outreach and conversations that are going to need to happen along the river. And this gives us a really good, resources to draw upon to do that we wouldn't have otherwise. So that's sort of the background to the project and what's happening. But I don't see it as anything where anyone has made up their mind about one course of action. I see it as being able to, get really in-depth knowledge about, multiple courses of action, from keeping things exactly the way they are to, a much more drastic change. So that's kind of the background to the project. I'm not explaining it as well as it's sort of laid out in the funding application. So I really encourage everybody in the room who's interested to read it.
Well, then we'll let the comments. I wanted that clarification up front because it's a funding source to do the job we need to do.
Not for any construction, though, it's only the design phase. That any construction funding is another round.
Whole, understood. Yeah, understood. But it does allow us to have the monies to spend a look and evaluate and take the next step of the feasibility study options and take them to the next level of information so that information can be fed back for making some logical decisions, hopefully. All right. And Tom, did you want to make a comment?
Well, while Tom comes up, I think I think the timing is perfect because it gives legs to the advisory committee. Yep. So it couldn't be, the timing could not be better because the advisory committee will have a lot of work to do, actually. So,
Tom.
So you just passed, you guys, a resolution so the voters could vote on protecting, preserving, and maintaining the dam. A week later, we have this grant in front of us. You had mentioned repair in this grant. I don't see repair. There's nothing about preservation. I see develop final designs and engineering plans for full and partial removal. Where do you see that?
So if you look in the narrative.
Yeah, I don't have
the whole thing.
You have, it's in the packet, and if you look at the narrative section about the dam on page 2.
the project context has it just on page 1.
Yeah, so I can see you're
Dan's
looking at and I see why you feel that way just reading that. That's just the press release that NIFWF puts out in 2 sentences to describe every project. Full or partial removal also is terminology that partial removal can contain anything from a few inches, which has been on the table since I got on.
Yep.
And the downtown TIF district mentions the need to lower it. So
I've been in support of that.
yeah, so I think part of the job is to figure out, is there a magic number that might make it so we don't have to use the gate or whatever, but I can see why you feel that way just reading. And when I saw that the press releases went out, I was like, oh, that's too bad, because if people are reading that here, just trying to get a fuller context, they're gonna be concerned, which is why the full narrative is contained in our packet, which shows you all what we wrote to the grant-making agency, and which very clearly spells out that anything that happens, I think it says that with, at least one of the downtown dams is going to be subject to a public vote. That, they ask you lots about who are your stakeholders, and in our case, the stakeholders is the whole town. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we said we need a lot of money to be able to go back, and more people need to more fully understand the full range of options. There is doubt about whether the preservation option has been fully explored. We can't currently answer questions well about, how much is it viable to just enlarge the gate, for instance? Would that solve any problems? How much would that cost? All of those things we can't answer right now, and we understand that needs to be explored. So I'm hoping people will take a look at the full narrative to see exactly what we said to them and see if you feel any better.
I just don't see anything about repair or preservation in this grant.
See, okay, so this is right in the.
I don't know how you could go forward on a grant.
This is right in the narrative.
On whether or not we don't even know if the citizens want this or not. I mean, you got to allow the citizens to vote before we even go
So,
forward.
okay, this is right in the narrative of the grant. I'm going to read this because it's on page 3 in the narrative, which is in the packet, and we'll post it all on the website. It says, public comment indicated an interest in more fully answering questions about the viability of simply raising the seawall in Harbor Park and bringing in more fill, enlarging and or automating the gate on Montgomery Dam, building a fish ladder around the dam, adding fall protection. We will develop cost estimates and begin permitting discussions on these gray infrastructure solutions in order to more clearly differentiate for residents the difference in cost and benefits between the current design and nature-based solutions.
Well, anyway, it's there.
What's that?
It's there. You just might not have the opportunity yet, Tom, to read the whole narrative.
I read the whole thing.
Did you?
Yeah, I read the whole thing.
Well,
And where, because what you're looking at right there doesn't seem,
It's a separate, this is the grant itself.
oh,
so that's
doesn't look like it.
not
And this has,
what we're reading from.
No, it's not what
It's
we're reading.
not
That's the summary.
this is mentioning the matching funds,
Would you-
the
would-
260,000.
would you-
and then
I'll
has a
send it just
description
directly to
below.
you, Tom.
It's already in the packet.
I know, but in case you,
You're not going to read it now, but anyway, look at the documents in the packet, Tom.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have it, contrary
Okay.
to what you just said.
I'll get it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Ken, do you want to make a comment,
Yeah, thank you.
question?
I want to start by backing up what Tom said, that the public perception is that the announcement came out and it was to take dams down, and this followed up just by a week. You had just said that you would take no action to take the dams down, and a week later, there's a press release that says that dams are coming down. So I think it's on you guys to make it clear to the townspeople that that is not true. But furthermore, how did the granting agency come up with this summary? They have clearly tagged this grant with dam removal, because that is what they used to summarize in their press release. That they have, their shorthand within their agency and in their press release is that the Camden grant is for dam removal. So I think you need to correct that in the public perception and with the granting agency. They are just committed, you guys, to dam removal. And in
Sorry,
contradiction to what you just decided a week before.
Contrary to what Audra just read, I disagree. I think you're reading into this thing way too deeply
I think
and incorrectly.
part of the
If you also,
removal is what Tom just said here.
Correct.
He would actually be in
Tom, wait a
favor-
minute, Tom, wait, she's talking.
Oh, no,
please.
no, I interrupted. That's not okay.
I have the floor.
And they haven't committed us to anything. I just want to correct you on that. This has not committed us to anything.
Correct.
No,
it doesn't.
I have read the application, and
Did you
when
read?
they
did you
are,
read-
it is an action to plan for dam removal. That is an action. The planning, it may not be taking a bulldozer to the dam, but planning it is an action. So you have, on the one hand, pledged not to take any action, and on the other hand, you're accepting a grant which is taking action. I just want to point that out, and if you want to publicize otherwise, then you really need to,
Please read
because
the full grant.
I
and then
have.
then we'll
I
comment
did.
from that, okay? I think it's fair. You're reading from the documents in our packet is the full document from which Audra just read, and I would disagree completely with your interpretation of we made an agreement. Anything that will come out of anything, advisory committee or to the resolution, will come through this board, yes, in the town, and it will go to the voters. That's what we've resolved. That hasn't changed one bit. And if that's not clear, then I can repeat it. There's nothing in this that suggests we have to or get funded for it. Allison, I get my A's mixed up sometimes. Allison suggested this is for studying, is putting flesh on the bone. It's what we need to do so the residents have information from which to vote whether or not a dam should be left alone, or whether a river should be modified, or fish, whatever comes out. We don't want to jump ahead at that. We're not. jumping ahead at that. You have this, I don't know where this is coming from, except for it's overreaction. Again, read the full grant in all of its terminology, which I'm not sure you've had an opportunity
So
to do
I'm
yet.
helping you to understand, when you have acknowledged that you have a communications problem, part of it is that you don't know how what you're saying is coming across. And I'm trying to help you to understand that this is what everybody in town read. People are coming to me saying, what have they just done? They voted to
I see.
take no action, and
So
the
to
very
my-
next week.
I just made a statement in public that we'll all stand behind,
Yes.
and it's not going to change, and that needs to be communicated. Yes, I agree with you, Ken. We need to communicate effectively and firmly and not get involved in he said, she said, or what document you're reading. We all have to work off the same document, which is the grant package that Audra read from.
Very
And
good,
its
yes.
intent to the public, saying it again, the intent of this is the ability to have funds so that we can investigate the alternatives that were recommended in the feasibility study. A feasibility study is not a design document. It's not a decision maker. It's just saying, are we in the ballpark on whatever it's recommending? And this is going to put flesh on the bone so the advisory committee and others can make recommendations through the process to eventually get to voter decision.
Right, I did read the application last night, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, to give you the opportunity to say what you have just
Okay, Ken,
said.
thank you.
Now, I have a couple more factual questions. $1.6 million in grant, but you've glossed over the $260,000 Camden taxpayer money portion of this. And
Correct.
I don't want to see you gloss that over. I think
Correct.
that's an
The
important
matching-
contribution.
There is a requirement for matching funds, as most grants have. That's correct.
The great thing about this program is that it allows up to 100% of that to be in-kind contributions. So we can, at another time, go over the breakdown, but if you look at the what's in there, a lot, since we already do a fair amount of work to the dams, all of that is, can be counted as matching contributions.
matching
And so,
funds. Staff time, staff
the
time.
water quality thing that we're doing, the FB environmental stuff, all of that. Normally what you see as a one-to-one requirement, they did not require that this time, and they're allowing it to be all in kind. So all volunteer time, actually the committee's time can be counted as an in-kind contribution to the grant, which is
Any stakeholder engagement and
public
participation.
that is something that will be important, is
So
keeping track of that time.
Bottom line, Ken, is it's not a dollar for dollar out of the taxpayers, additional out of the taxpayers. There always could be some, but the in-kind thing makes a huge difference.
Thanks. The other question is, so this does involve a dollar contribution. Does that mean it's going to be on the vote in November? Does this grant, must this grant be accepted by the townspeople before it's accepted?
The matching contributions that were specified in the grant are things that have already been approved by voters.
I don't remember seeing that amount, but
So
It's in, like they said, it's in kind, so it's not a dollar for dollar.
there is some, so
There
the
might
money
be
for the Habitat Restoration Reserve Fund, so the money that we talked about from last time that's paying for FB Environmental's work, and is going to be paying for the water quality.
Initially.
Monitoring. That's another thing that the grant opens up, is the possibility to maybe be able to use that for some of the water quality monitoring. But it's, that's what's been unique about this process, is that we haven't had to come up with a bunch of cash contributions. We did have to make a commitment about the amount of volunteer hours.
so there
we
won't be a
believed.
chance to vote on this issue in
And
November.
accepting the grant, no.
No.
Tom?
Could, Audra or Allison, if you know, could you identify that matching? And you're saying it's in kind, it's something, so we're doing maintenance on the dam?
Yep, any sort of maintenance that we do, work of the dam control agent can be counted. Like we were saying, the water quality monitoring program and the money that the town spent on that can be counted as match. Any funds to engage, Forrest that we've spent to date and his team can be counted as matching funds.
Could we generate a broad, it doesn't have to be down to the penny, but a broad breakdown of that for the public?
Absolutely.
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, the things that are in there right now, it's not like, we would have to
This is.
change that, so the things that we specified in order to
Right.
get the grant, I believe, were, one of them is even the Rosanav Bridge replacement, because it's work along the river.
Yeah, this is very, very common.
We can definitely give you what was told to them.
We can
It was
break down. This is,
broad.
Tom, this is, and Stephanie especially, haven't been involved yet in a lot of the grant development, but all the grants to tannery, et cetera, there's been an in-kind match of some form, 20%, sometimes more.
Or usually it's a cash match.
Yeah, usually it's a cash match. This is not. And this is,
It's cash.
well, it could be, but in the end of the day, to Ken's question, or anybody's question, we don't have hidden funds someplace that we can just grab at, that we can throw at something. If it affects the budget, it has to go to the voters.
That's my
Period.
understanding, yeah.
Yeah, period. But to your question about the grant itself, no, it's a bank account we can draw from, to use on this evaluation of this river project. And that's simply what it's for.
Thank you.
You should be excited with this grant because you love learning, I know you. And this grant is going to give us the opportunity to learn, to understand, to question, to design, to create, to have, a creative approach to this problem that we're all going to try to solve together. So
Right.
it's an exciting, really, I mean, it's just an amazing opportunity. You know what I'm talking about. You love learning.
I do look forward to the work of the advisory committee. I have noted that over the last months, you've been putting a lot of eggs in the basket of that advisory committee. So I suggest you support them in reaching out to the public, because that has been a part that really this town needs.
Yep.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, you have
So that's going to get posted on the website? Is that what we're going to do for the matching grant, the matching funds?
Yeah, so we'll post everything to do with the grant on the website. So the narrative, and since everybody's interested in the matching funds, we can kind of lump the broad categories in.
It's not that big a number, believe it or not, the matching.
I think it's important that it's there, though.
All right.
Answers that question.
Ray,
Ray Andreessen, excuse me. I haven't moved since I was up here before, so I'm still on Cove Road. Just want to point out that you can save taxpayers a little bit of money by adding maybe 2 more people, either as full members or alternates to the advisory committee.
Oh.
Okay. Quick question, though, okay? It sounds like Audra and you, both of you, Allison, of course, both of you were,
okay. Nice to meet you.
helped compose this grant application and everything. Was there anybody else who worked on it that deserves credit?
Interfluve
yeah.
does the,
Did.
yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, a lot of work. I would point out from my experience, just when we haven't done this town, when we applied for grants in business I dealt in, we spent $2,000 to $5,000 for grant writers to put together a grant. You're getting a dedicated.
I want to be
town-
very careful not to take credit because it was
I know.
primarily Allison and Interfluve. So.
We had to put a price tag to the voters on what she has done in a number of grants. It would boggle your mind. I just want to make that point for the public.
Right.
That's, grant writing is an art.
I
It's
know.
not just
I
writing.
know. Familiar with it.
Well,
been
it's
there, right?
surprising
You know
actually that we got it, because I didn't want to be, and there was a reason, lots of people could have written this, but I did want to write part of it because I wanted to be very clear about the situation here, and knowing that in order to move forward, we have to explore all these other
Right.
options. So I fully expected that they were going to come back and say, we don't want to fund this, and this part of it. And I thought we were going to have to say, okay, well, the town maybe can come up with a part to fund this, but they didn't. So it is a good opportunity for us.
I think another important point that would probably put a few people's minds at rest, when you kind of look at the projects and how they lay them out, it says final design and permitting. And, I was concerned from another grant that we had just sort of finished out, that we wouldn't be able to get to the final design and permitting phase, or it would be, too much for everybody to sort of commit us to that path. And the funding body, we spoke with them before we applied, and they were very clear that they didn't expect us to get to the permitting phase.
Right.
So that's, if at the end of this, there is enough consensus to get to that, I think there'd be funds available, but that's not required. So I think that should, give everybody a sense of comfort that it's not so final that we can't look at,
It should be, collectively, there should be an excitement in the town that we have these monies to do a quality job of looking at all options,
Yeah.
period.
Right. And just one last quick question. Is there a time limit or window for when these funds have to be
Yes,
spent?
yes.
What is it?
2 years?
2 years, starting from June 1st.
From June
is the
1st.
start
Okay,
date.
fine.
Question, Ray, good question. Tom?
Is it possible to use some of this money for looking at the properties that the town owns that are along the river and getting some estimates to do remediation for things that we may have identified that need to be remediated?
Yeah, I think that was specifically identified in the grant.
There are a few things that were identified in there, the tannery
Yep.
being
Riverbank.
one. At the time that we applied for the grant, we didn't know exactly which part of the tannery project was going to get cleaned up, so it's a little bit vague there, which is a good thing, but yeah, we can use some money for that. Another thing that this is going to allow us to do is to extend the study up. There's a little tributary that comes down behind, from Thomas Street, down behind Lupin Terrace and behind Ames Terrace, that's really washing out a lot and overtopping Rossin Ave sometimes. And that is, this money is going to allow us to sort of extend the study up into that area and see if we can figure out some solutions for those people. There's some stuff about what if there's the Rossin Avenue Bridge that's something the town has already committed to, replacing that with a pedestrian bridge. That's
Right. So the answer is yes.
Good.
So,
That's
yeah.
good.
All right, we're going to, one more question.
Yeah, just a couple of questions.
Sure.
I'm Roger Akeley. I live in Camden. And I was just wondering about the timing and the committee. The committee, I had thought at one point was going to be funded with that $20,000 or something that you voted on, and that goes quick. I mean, 20,000 isn't very much. Is the committee going to stick around for the 2 years? So they will go beyond that?
Well, I'm hoping, yes. It's the point. It's to have a tool, a mechanism that allows us to engage with the public and have citizen advisory. So that's why I was saying it's absolutely, the timing could not be more perfect because it gives legs to the committee and establishes it for the long term. So
Yes.
So it's very exciting.
And they'll be reporting to you more than once, I suspect.
I'm going to be the liaison to the committee, so the role of a liaison is to, whenever we have a meeting, I report it to the select board so that the public knows what's happening. We also have a website at the town where we post everything we do about the river project, and that's going to keep on being documented. So we're definitely intending on increasing communication and making sure that the public has all the documents available and can ask questions.
Okay. Just one more question. Audra, I think you alluded to a process where there'd be kind of general questions and conceptualization early on, and then the second part of it will be more detailed in engineering work. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the feasibility study that's posted online, that's sort of the general study, that's the jumping off point for these more specific, design and engineering work that'll happen on this particular grant-funded project.
So in the first 3 or 4 months, there'll be that general process, and at some point it will convert to an RFP
Well,
going out.
you're getting into the schedule of the committee, and I think they should really address that.
Yeah,
Rather
but
than
I'm just
trying to,
talking-
I don't know.
That's what he's asking.
What are you asking?
I'm just wondering if it's kind of a two-step process.
Oh.
Where there's a generalized overview of the watershed and what is going to be done.
Audra's answer to that was it already exists.
So
The
the committee
74-page
is going to be.
feasibility report exists, and it gives you a broad, and since the beginning, that has been a broad look at the river. It is a feasibility study. Some people seem to have a trouble
the
understanding what that
He's
is.
asking if the.
The
so the-
committee hasn't looked at that. I
Right,
mean,
so
the
that's-
committee hasn't ingested that yet and
Exactly.
accepted it.
Yeah, I think the first phase of the river committee was before we knew if we were going to get this grant, so we had to keep it basically like reviewing the study developing some questions, developing a vision
Right.
for the river that's broad, and
And a
think
gap
we-
analysis.
Right, and looking
Yes.
at what they may have missed and what
What's
questions
missing.
people still have. But then, you're absolutely right, what we haven't completely defined yet is what's going to be the role of the committee
Yep.
at sort of phase 2, or maybe multiple committees, but it's going to be a deeper
Right.
dive into
More detail.
exactly what you're saying. Maybe it will evolve into multiple committees that, need to look at different
Yeah.
parts of it or whatever.
You know,
but-
because we didn't know we were going to get this money, we still have a lot of planning work to do
Yeah.
to kind of figure out how the different groups are going to,
Work together.
Yeah, exactly. So
But designs can mean so many different things, and do you see at the end of 2 years that you're going to have designs that you can give a contractor, and the contractor can go out and build something with it, or remove something with it, or do you see them as sort of intermediary? I mean,
I think.
So complicated.
Well, it is very complicated. And first of all, when you talk about design, what options are you going to detail design?
Right.
If
I
you
know,
had
that's
5
the big
options
issue.
for this area of the river, which one are you going to do the detailed design to get to that point
yeah,
for a
and when do you get to
contractor?
that point?
Yeah.
In the first phase that you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that ideally, at the end of that first phase, you're going to have a lot of information about where your priorities go for the rest of it, the design priorities.
That falls design for construction, or wherever option the voters approve. That lies downstream quite a ways from where we are right now.
Past this grant, past
Yeah.
this 2 million.
Well, the funding of the construction.
I think it would be ideal after, $1.6 million worth
we have a
of
better idea of what we wanna do,
investigation,
yeah.
we would come up with a plan for, the entire river as to, what we could put before voters to get some sort of approval to move forward on. I think that would be
to
ideal, but
90% what was stated is for the lower 4 dams to start with conceptual options, and whichever conceptual options can reach consensus is probably the wrong word, but whichever ones become favored, those get advanced to a later stage. That's some of what we're going to.
I mean, the dams maybe are the most expensive things, but how about the fish habitats and things like that? Will that be part of the?
Yes.
You don't think of design so much for that, but you've got to have an
Yes.
overall picture of what you're doing in order to.
Yes, correct.
Really good point, because a huge part of this is actually the section above the Knowlton Street Dam, which stretches really almost all the way to Rossin Ave behind the middle school and all that. So that includes design for the Riverwalk. That's been a challenging part of the Riverwalk because some of the wetland areas. And so what we're hoping is that they could come up with a way to maybe move some of that sediment around, reestablish a river channel in some of those places where the sediment has accumulated, and that maybe that could lead to a viable Riverwalk path along the wastewater treatment plant and things like that. That's what has to be really looked into, like, is it just one little pocket of sediment that's contaminated? Or, if they can find this is where we need a lot of community input, like for beneficial reuse of sediments and things
Right.
like that. But that was a big part of the grant, is also wetland restoration, and so,
But it's a
yeah.
long process, and it will, and visually, as the committee, and it will take better form for the public to understand what's going on with this whole process. It's not as simple as ABC.
No, it isn't simple. Committee will be real busy.
Thank you very much.
Now we can get to work, so
Yes,
that's
now we get to
exciting.
work.
It's very exciting.
So with that, I want to move.
One more quick question. You mentioned about the in-kind matching funds, and I just want you all that are sitting there, Montgomery Dam is not like a 4-letter word. It's something that a lot of people treasure in their hearts. And we've been asking for a long time for some basic maintenance. So can basic maintenance be done and counted as matching funds? Is there money for that? Where can that come from? There seems to be money to pull out for this and pull out for that, but what about for Montgomery Dam? Can't we just have some basic maintenance?
basic
the
maintenance.
gate?
I don't, I mean, I think if I asked everyone
Yeah,
on the
we have a
board
different
what they
definition.
think basic maintenance of the Montgomery
Correct.
Dam is, I
Correct.
think I get a different answer from all five of them.
I would agree. I would agree.
That's what the committee is going to be hoping,
Exactly.
looking. So if there were things that were low-ticket items that
That's what I
could be
mean.
easily
They can-
done to
they can address
improve
that.
aesthetics, I think everybody would be eager to do that. What we haven't found so far, what was presented to the board initially was an $80,000 aesthetic improvement, which was too much. So if there are, what we really need to understand is each little piece of that, how much does that cost? And so those are the types of questions that, and also understanding what people think would visually improve it.
Yep.
Is it removing some brush over here? Is it doing this? I mean, I think that would be good.
Because
input.
2 years from now is 2 more years
Yeah,
of
we-
waiting for that basic stuff to be done. And I know Tom has addressed it before.
This process can consider, to answer your
Stuff
question,
isn't-
this process can address that, yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
So
we're going to hold you to that.
we're going to ask the advisory committee to advise on dam maintenance?
Maybe not. It's a good.
Well,
I don't think that's what the advisory committee's for. I think the town needs to take a leadership role and say we're going to maintain something there.
Well, that's an
None
operation.
of these things are low-ticket, like, if there were something that were.
I understand, a budget aside, I think that the town should say we're not going to have, I was there yesterday, so, there's boards exposed, and the dam is crumbling, and there's brush and grass and whatever down there. I don't know if pulling those roots makes the dam
weaker?
weaker, yeah. But the town has done maintenance on that dam in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, tons of it.
We do need to decide, this is going to be a long process, and we need to decide, and I don't know if it's the select board or if it's an operations function, but we do need to decide what the basic level maintenance we're going to do on that dam until we get a recommendation, it's voted, it's gone to the voters, et cetera.
It's due for an inspection, and so that's part of the.
You're correct.
I would say at this point, I am not comfortable making an operational call about
I'm not either.
what needs to be done on that.
Not
I do
either. We
think
need-
that's
we
a
need-
discussion for the select
We
board.
would need input on what is recommended, and that's the process that you'd have to define, is what's recommended to be done. I can go out there and make a comment as an engineer, and that's not relevant to my job as a select board member.
So I was on the dam.
Depends on
sorry.
what it is you're trying to do, just like
Well,
with
just if we
anything.
can identify some maintenance items that need to be done operationally, we need somebody to take a look at that. Who would that be?
Well, I was on the dams committee, and if Dave Bolstridge had something he wanted to bring before us, he would. Otherwise, Dave made the decisions himself, and he had some type of budget to deal with it. Is Dave still operating in that capacity?
Dave St. Laurent
Dave
is,
St. Laurent's
but I'd say it's probably, if you want to look at, it's going to be all the same stuff that we talked about
Right,
4 or 5 years ago.
right,
I mean,
nothing's
for
changed.
years, there's been an inspection that has said that the trees in Harbor Park should be cut down.
Right.
And before the time that I was on the board.
Right.
Those birch trees. And that's part of the original Olmsted design,
Mm-hmm.
and that's under the discretion of the Library Board of Trustees.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, it's-
and I like your question, though,
I think-
about pulling out the weeds that are in it. I don't, that's a,
Doesn't that get off topic, though? We're not talking about the seawall, we're talking about the dam.
No, you're talking
But
about.
that's part of the
That's
dam,
part of
where
it,
that
Tom. That's
vegetation
part of it.
is.
goes into it.
That's part of it. You can't ignore that part. Now, whether there's a few weeds that can be pulled, I don't think that's the biggest problem that's out there. I think it's a valuation. Has agencies that reviewed the dam created any issues that they're concerned with in that?
No, because it's not a high-hazard dam.
Correct, correct. So it's an open topic. We're not going to solve it tonight. We're going to have to come up with an idea of what the board might recommend for evaluation of cleaning up, quote unquote,
I'd like to see it on the agenda.
I think we have to, I'll discuss it with Audra and see if there's an action item we can come up with that looks at this or not, and we'll report back to the board.
Yeah,
It might
dam
be good
agent.
there's a document that was created a while back that looked at the different things that had been done
yeah.
on the dam.
We will look at it, we will evaluate that, but we're going to.
Through a bunch of those things, and we could-
We're getting off topic now, but we will evaluate that and we'll get back to the board.
We have Forrest, and maybe we can.
Yeah.
I mean, we're holding up Forrest.
Yeah, Forrest, you can take off. I think we're down to our last time. Thanks for
I mean,
showing
this is
up. I
great for him to
appreciate it.
listen to, though. I mean, this is
Yeah,
it, right?
it's-
No, thank you. It's all good information to hear. Thanks, everybody.
And we'll talk soon.
The last,
All right.
the last discussion item we have, Roger, you can introduce this one, is really the Camden representative to the Knox County Budget Committee. Can you give us just a brief knowledge you have on what's going on here?
Yes, so this is a 3-year term, and our current representative finishes out their term as of December 31st. And so the process is, it's a, state ballot for any county seat, and this is an elected position. And I think that, given confusion around the county process,
Right.
no one took out papers to officially have their name on the ballot. However, there's a write-in process if anybody is interested in serving on the Budget Committee. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, they have to complete, and there's a form for this, a general election declaration of write-in candidacy, just to give notice that they want to be a write-in candidate, and that they can file it in person at the Secretary of State's office. And that deadline is September 9th, 2022. I'm kind of laughing because this is just a really
silly.
inefficient and not very,
It's terrible. It's terrible.
not very friendly process for anybody to,
So somebody could write
I
in,
can't believe nobody's been interested so far.
can't believe it. It's shocking.
so somebody can write in the same person twice and they could win.
That's kind of what's happened in the past.
And it's the Knox County Budget Committee plays a more powerful role than many committees. I believe that it takes, so we have the county commissioners, they set the budget in cooperation with county staff, right? And then the budget committee, or
Yeah, so it's,
the
the way
budget
that it,
committee has to approve by 3/5 or something, or?
well, so the administrator presents the budget to the Budget Committee. Then it goes to the commissioners, and the Budget Committee can override the commissioners by 2/3 majority vote. So they're a really important committee. And, I hear people talk all the time about how they want regionalized services and we should do more collaboratively. Well, the county really should be the vehicle for doing those sort of
Absolutely,
things.
absolutely.
And there are things that, we've advocated really strongly in the past to be included in the county budget. So I think a good example is the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. It was at one point, Knox County wasn't a member of the Mid-Coast Council of Governments, so each individual municipality had to decide to participate and pay dues. And that just made, regional planning really, really difficult because, if you only have maybe 4 communities within the county, and it was always the service center communities, so it was Camden, Rockport, Rockland, and Thomaston that were members and nobody else. It's difficult to sort of coordinate, particularly economic development planning. So, that's something that I think it's really important. It should sit with the county, and, if we don't have, representation that's advocating for those sort of regional services, we're not going to be as capable of doing things regionally.
Unless we pick up a name, a person, and get them on board and publicize it, nothing's going to happen.
Right, and that's why I wanted this on the agenda, because I think that it's something that's important that doesn't get the notice and the public acknowledgement that it
If
should.
the board members have any ideas, somebody they want to recommend, I would suggest they bring it to the table next time, and so we can press that person and get 12 votes to win.
Oh, my apologies, it's a 4-year term, not a 3-year term.
Oh, it's 4?
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Oh, I thought it was 3.
But with all the federal funding coming through also,
Late for that, they've already voted on how to spend that.
but there's more coming.
I'm not sure of that.
Maybe not to the county, but all the ARPA funds are allocated.
Yeah, they're allocated and gone, $7 million,
7.7.
7.7. All right.
And Camden is the largest contributor
To the
to
budget.
the county budget.
So we need to have a voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a voice.
We have so, we have so many interested citizens that show up and watch all the things that Camden is doing. It would be,
I know.
I mean, I'm as guilty as
know.
anyone, but it's.
Onward to our manager's report.
So I don't have a lot this week. So to follow up from the workshop, I am going to send, sort of a summary of the discussion and, a revised matrix with, the projects that we currently have going, also the ones that were talked about. But I do think at some point having some sort of follow-up discussion where we can talk a little bit more in detail would be very helpful. Because having such a broad discussion, it was really difficult to kind of, get your input on things, because a lot of it comes down to, there are, more specific projects that I'm sure all of you are interested in or want to advocate for. So I think that would be helpful to kind of narrow it down to some of those specific projects, because there are things that are falling off the list this year because we did have 2 really busy summers. So I think, that's going to be really helpful. And I think that, the development of a list of ordinance amendments that you would like us to focus on will be, that'll be great. We're going to have a new planner hopefully coming on board sometime this fall. So that's additional capacity to do additional work in regards to, policy development. And what was the other part of that?
Newsletters.
What's that?
Sorry.
Yeah, that too.
I think the more we can, from that last meeting, the more put some flesh on the bone of that literal bone priorities thing. It'll help get that to the board so the board can chew on that, and to the point of, what do you call it, a goal, objectives underneath those subsets. And then we can dig into it better in another session. I agree. Otherwise, because it's very nice to have the overall priorities, but it's the devil's in the detail for your staff.
Right.
All right.
Right, and I mean, and people mean different things when you talk about like quality of life or whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
And, and there are things popping up in that regard that sort of cross over. Like, for example, I was looking back through, things I've done over the past 5 years, and I worked with Randy and I think it was Rick Seibel at the time, but Dave St. Laurent has helped with it, like a traffic calming policy.
Right.
So that, when people start to approach you because they're concerned about, traffic on their street, either the volume or the speed or whatever the case may be, we have some sort of process that we can go through to respond to that. And that we worked on that in 2018 and it just wasn't the right time.
No.
The board at the time had other things that they were working on, but I think sort of coming back to something like that might be something that you're all interested in. There are just like a few things like that.
Yep.
There are these sort of policies and processes that you might want to look at, and now might be a good time.
But we need to get them to something we can chew on. That's what we'll have to do for the next discussion. Anything else?
The other thing, just to give everyone a heads up, the data collection for the water quality monitoring has begun.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Great.
We need volunteers for that, right?
I'm
Maybe
sorry.
not
It's
yet.
too bad that Forest isn't on. I think they're just kind of setting it up
I think they're setting
initially. I think
equipment.
into the future, absolutely.
With that, Select Board, Stephanie, have anything?
The only thing, I've had a few people ask about the parking meters again and asking about,
Parking at the landing?
yes, if we've ever figured out if they can go back at night if they've been there in the morning. We talked about that, and everybody keeps telling me that it can be changed.
Well, the
don't
computer
know.
can change anything you want. I mean, that's for
Right,
sure.
but how is that happening?
I don't.
Is it happening?
It was on my plate to check, and I haven't had a chance, so I'll do that for the next.
And
Sorry.
are we going
I
to?
think they can, but I don't know, I can't remember the time spent, the hours we put in between. I'll get back to you, I
I think they
promise.
said they were only going to ticket for that if it became a problem, but that committee should probably meet again to
We have
discuss.
set it up at the advisory committee, it's somewhere.
Okay.
And we set it up in the system.
Okay.
And then the only other thing is, I am involved with a lot of elderly folks that are wondering if they are residents, and I know we talked about it in the past as well, if we were going to do a reduced fee for them, or if we can set that up. We discussed it.
I think we can
and-
set up anything we want to set up, but whether that's the top, I think in this pilot program, I still believe there's still, the summer's almost over, because this expires October 31st, I think, of the first, so another month. And then we'll have to evaluate that, plus many other comments have been made about, should it be, as many hours you want? Should it be, the meter said 3 hours, but it's really not limited to 3 hours. There's a lot of things we have to play with. That could be on the list.
We decided to make as
I
few.
think you probably need to have your microphone
Oh,
closer.
sorry, thank you. We decided to include as few exceptions as possible in this test run,
Yep.
just to see if it works, if people pay, and to get some feedback on the changes people would like to. The one thing, I mean, older folks should look into is getting a handicap tag.
Handicap license plate?
Yeah.
Well, that's a possibility, but again,
because that's one of the things
there
that
have probably
we
been a
talked
half
about.
dozen different comments made from people about accessibility and those kind of things. They need to be considered as we go into the next phase. That's we have to, and not everybody's little item is going to be accepted or rejected.
No.
But
But it's good feedback. We need to have feedback and
We just have a huge population of older folks that used to go down.
Half the town's over 65.
And walk around, and now they can't
Well,
make it
just
down
because
there.
they have a reduced
Or
rate.
they can pay, $4 to go down and walk around.
Right,
It's
understood.
just
Understood.
really kind of
Yeah, I get it.
a
Yeah,
stick in the pants when
but-
they
yeah.
paved the way for all of us to be here
Yeah, it's-
already. So,
Are you worried about that, people who can't
Accessibility.
walk, that are having trouble with
Just-
mobility, or?
just not mobility as far as being able to move around, but it is a heck of a jaunt to park over by the fire department and walk down.
You mean because
Well, they can park,
because they don't want to spend $4 or $5?
Oh, I understand that, but like there's street parking and there's,
Yeah. Well, I think that
after
was-
6, I mean, I hear from people also
After
that.
6, it gets dark.
it's also free.
After, in August.
again,
I
we-
know
I-
this.
yeah.
because-
There's a bunch of things that we could do with this, like,
The list
you know,
is-
I mean.
This is a little premature to be discussing because I've heard a lot of comments like that, and they need to be considered in the next phase of this pilot program.
there are a lot of positive also.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, a lot of positive. Anything else, Stephanie?
Nope.
Sophie?
No, I think people are tired of hearing me today.
I do think we need to talk more about the parking, just because in conjunction with that, there's like all this stuff that comes up about, that we haven't found a solution for the campers. We're saying no to things, but
Right.
then we don't have,
Yeah, I
there
agree.
are lots of people that are filled with ideas, and I think we do have some of the, like, town staff that can filter that too, like the parking
Well,
enforcement officer.
Well,
that's-
we're going to lose our parking enforcement officer soon,
Yeah.
so,
What
yeah.
do you mean?
Long story.
He's moving on.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Turnover.
It's been very clear that we'll take him back whenever he's,
Finished.
yeah.
Well,
Anyway, but I think there is
that's really terrible, because
that's one.
I mean, can we make sure to get his input lots before?
No,
That's really terrible
Randy and I
news.
are going to meet with him and,
Because I asked him to record some memos,
Yeah.
to use his cell phone, say, whenever people talk to you, just make a note. So
Yeah,
we can
right.
So
have
many
all
good
this.
ideas, and I feel like we haven't properly
Yeah.
even, like,
I think your point about parking as a general topic is correct. We do miss a
That's
parking
terrible.
committee, but I think there's a lot of issues with respect to parking we have to consider going forward, including, I agree, the 24-hour parking. I've heard so many comments about that, and we haven't.
He was leaving now.
But I think
And-
we should have, let's finish the pilot project.
Yeah,
Gather some
yeah.
information,
Yeah.
and then from that point, see what else we want to do for next year or for the rest of the town,
Yeah.
and have kind of a structured approach to
Well, this
this.
comes
I think
back,
we should pay him to write up something of everything he's observed, though, because he has so many, like, that's a big deal that we're gonna lose
Yeah.
that
yeah.
it is a big deal.
institutional knowledge, and
But I agree with Sophie. I think we've got to take one step at a time, and we don't want to move too quickly. I think it was smart to start the way we did, and with not many changes, because a person Whether they don't want to spend $3 or whatever, that's of course, a separate issue, but I think there's a lot of parking things we have to attack. Anything else? Mr. Tom?
No, thank you.
I don't think, you've talked about the things I was going to mention. I got a lot of positive feedback on the parking thing, but there's been some comments just like that one that says, could we do this? And I said, yeah, we can. You know, I'll show you how intelligent the system is. When I used it for the first time, it was like 4 something in the afternoon, and I wanted to put in, you know, a couple hours, and I went to plus, it stopped at 1 hour and 43 minutes. The machine was telling me, hey, stupid, it's 6 o'clock, you don't have to pay. You know, so it's, you know, these are the things that can be programmed into it. So the good news is we can improve it, there's no question about it, especially for a town whose residents is over 50% of the population is over 65. And that's different.
And their taxes aren't going to be going up pretty soon.
You'll be getting the bills pretty soon.
On Saturday, we did.
Oh, you did? No comment.
Oh, I haven't checked my mailbox. You said we get to get our tax bills, is that what you said?
Yep, they're coming out.
I'm really bad at checking the mail.
Yeah, anyway, that's another topic of
It just
discussion.
comes out automatically for my
Yes.
mortgage payment, so.
But with that, I will ask for an adjournment motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, second, all those in favor? Good job, gang. Thank you, Janice.